Hey guys, welcome back to Finance for Firefighters with Warren P. Today's episode is going to be talking about not keeping up with the Joneses. So, common expression, trying to keep up with the Joneses. Felt like there was some value kind of talking about this, especially when a lot of firefighters tend to see other firefighters with tons of toys and big houses, fancy things, fancy items that they kind of rack their brain saying, well, we make the same amount of money. How is this person getting all these things, right? Am I doing something wrong? So if you look back to some of the previous episodes and some of the stuff I'm going to kind of push moving forward, a lot of that stuff is going to be talking about doing, planning things strategically, living within your means, using overtime to pay off debt and build wealth and things like that. And a lot of times, the expression "keeping up with the Joneses" is really looking at folks that really appear to be doing well, but they're not doing very well at all. So we're going to dive into a couple of examples today, looking at the difference between a responsible firefighter and an irresponsible firefighter financially. So keeping up with the Joneses today, if you're firefighter Jones and you're watching this, I apologize. This is nothing personally against you. It's more just geared at using the example of two different folks with the same income level and one person really looking like they're living well, even though they're living really poorly. On the surface it looks good, but in reality, it's not so good. So we're going to look at some examples of that today.
We're going to take a look at some examples about how Firefighter Jones makes decisions and what those decisions actually do to Firefighter Jones financially. So first example we're going to look at is having a truck financed. Then we're going to look at having a boat financed. And then a mortgage where Firefighter Jones is getting an FHA loan and only putting 3.5% down, which is going to obligate him to paying PMI. And then the last piece of it is we're going to look at Firefighter Jones pulling out a second mortgage and putting in a pool. What a truck loan will cost for this fictional firefighter that's living way outside their means. All right, so let's say the truck costs $70,000. We're going to do a 5-year term. We'll do 6.99. Say they have relatively good credit. Let's say they put $10,000 down. And we're going to put sales tax in at 7.25. Calculate. All right, so the total cost for this truck is a monthly payment of $1187 and change, loan amount of $60,000, sales tax plus the interest. So the total cost of a $70,000 truck is $86,000. Purchasing a 2015 Malibu boat. Approximate price $75,000. We'll do a 20-year loan term at 7.12, which is what they're going for now. Say you put $15,000 down. Sales tax is 7.25. Total loan amount $60,000. Monthly payment of $469. Total interest paid will be $52,600 and change, and the total cost of that boat is $133,000. Purchasing a home. So let's say that they got an FHA loan. They bought a house for $500,000. An FHA loan requires 3.5% down versus your 20%. The downside of that is you're going to have to pay PMI or property mortgage insurance. So $17,500 is 3.5%. This doesn't do decimal places, but this is 3.5% of $500,000. Interest rate is 6.5, roughly 30-year term fixed. Average property taxes for this, we're saving $7,500. Homeowners insurance is $32. The PMI is about $408, which is about a percentage of the entire loan. So the total payment for this person is $4,300 and change per month. Principal, or the amount they're getting loaned, is $482,000, and the total interest payments on this is $620,000. So the actual cost for this house for them is $1.1 million. Firefighter living outside their means. Let's assume in the previous example they had that $500,000 house, and a few years have gone by, and now they've got $100,000 in equity. And instead of absorbing that and gaining a better loan-to-value ratio because they put so little down on it, and remember initially they put down $17,500. Let's say that it went up $100,000 in value. So the original loan finance was $482,500, and now they've got $100,000 in equity. And they say, hey, I'm going to pull that out and I'm going to buy a pool. And they put $100,000 towards the second mortgage. So let's go down here and look at what that actually does. So they're going to have some closing costs associated with that, with the getting a second additional mortgage. And then, PMI, some of these things are roughly the same value as to what we had in the other example. But if we scroll down here, all the way down here to the bottom, total monthly costs prior was the $400 or $4,300 or almost $4,400 is what their original mortgage was. Now that they got a second mortgage, they're going to tack on almost an additional $900 a month just to put the pool in, by pulling the money out and using $100,000 to put a pool in cash through their through a second mortgage. So we're going to basically add the $4,400 plus the $900 a month, bringing the mortgage between the first and second to approximately $5,300 a month. Now we're going to look at some of the decisions the responsible firefighters made financially. Okay, this firefighter purchased a truck that was used and paid it off. They purchased a boat that was older and they also paid it off. And then the mortgage that they took out was 20%. They put 20% down, so they're not paying PMI. And then they're not putting in a pool. They're not doing anything in their backyard. They'll be able to do that. You'll see in these examples, they'll be able to do the truck, the boat, and the pool probably with the money that they've produced by saving and by making these decisions. A firefighter who makes good financial decisions, say that they bought the same price house. So the house costs $500,000. They put 20% down, so that's $100,000 down. Doing a 30-year term, same interest rate. Property taxes are the same, homeowners insurance is the same, except now they don't have PMI because they put the 20% down, so they're saving several $100s per month. So their total amount for their mortgage is $34, $33, $37 for their mortgage every month. The total amount of interest they're going to pay for the entire loan will be a little over $515,000. So the total cost of the house is just the addition of this plus the loan that they or the entire amount they put down. So a little over $1 million for the total cost of the house. All right, so let's talk through the two different firefighter scenarios. We'll start with Firefighter Jones, or the fictional firefighter. If you are Firefighter Jones, I apologize in advance. This is just for an illustration of it, to not keep up with the Joneses. But let's talk about Firefighter Jones. So still taking the same fictional Sacramento firefighter, gross of 120, net of 96,000 and change. Monthly amount they have take home is about 8,000. They are not doing anything towards their deferred comp. Here's the budget we looked at based on the calculations we had from the different scenarios. So the mortgage we said is a little over 4,300. Second mortgage they got when they added the pool is almost $900. They have an auto loan for that truck of almost $1,200, a boat loan of almost $470. So if you look at their total expenses, it's $8,800, and their total income is $8,000. So if we look over here at the needs, wants, savings category we used in previous episodes, the needs that this person has are all labeled with the N's, the W's are the wants, but the needs for this person are $7,100 of their budget, which is about 89% of the 8,000. The wants is about 1,600, making it about 21%. And obviously the two of these things are over 100%, but just for the illustration of the graph, way outside of the 50, 30, 20 split, the spot here that was normally labeled for savings is actually a negative they have. So they are not making their budget by over $700 a month if they spend no other things, eating out or anything like that. So this kind of person either racking up credit card debt, or they're forced to work overtime or have to have other means of bringing income in. So if we look at this over a period of time, the $700 or almost $800 a month that they're missing, for one, the 50, 30, 20 split is way off. And two, if we look down at the value at the end of it, they're paying $620,000 in interest over the entire loan. They're for the mortgage. They're paying over $11,000 for interest on the truck. They're paying over $52,000 in the interest on the 20-year boat loan, for a total amount of interest of $685,000 over a 30-year period. This person has done nothing to save for their 457, and they have no investments. So if you look at this over 3 decades, basically their entire career of making these types of decisions, they're going to be in a really, really crappy place. So when we look at keeping up with, look at all the things this person has with, they've got the pool, they've got this nice truck, they've got the boat, all of those things, they may look good on the surface, but financially they're doing really, really, really poorly. Now let's look over at the responsible firefighter if we use the same comparisons we had. So this firefighter, they went from renting a house to purchasing one. They put 20% down. Their mortgage is much less, even though they bought the exact same house. They didn't put a pool in yet, and they're probably going to be able to do a cash for pool, cash for boat, cash for truck when I explain this entire thing. But here's their budget. Um, this person is maxing out their 457, right? If we look up at the top, same gross, they're maxing out their 457, so their take home is about $6,600 a month. And then if we go down here, uh, budget is 5,300, 6,600 is their take home pay. So they've got an excess of $1,200 a month, right? They're living pretty lean, right? They only have the gym and some spending as their extra wants. But if we look at our ratio of 50, 30, 20 split, their needs are 76%, which is higher because they're starting out, let's say, and then their wants are pretty low, 5%. Their savings are 19%, so they're almost what they want to be. But we're not even including the deferred comp piece of it. This is just, if we look at this as investment savings. So based on their budget here, needs are about $5,000, very small for wants, and then still able to invest over $1,200 a month. And this particular firefighter has less take home than the other one does, the fictional firefighter Jones. So if we look at the debt this person racks up over an entire 30-year period, $515,000 in interest for the mortgage, which is not that much different than the other person, but the other person's basically spent all of the money that they could be saving, right? So if we look at that, 685, so they got another, 100 over $170,000 more in interest for firefighter Jones, but still significant interest because that's just what it is to buy a home. They're 457. I just ran some of these things in a compound interest calculator, maxing it for a 30-year period. They'd have $2.2 million in their 457 if they stuck with the same thing and they got no raises or nothing else different. And then if they were investing this $1,200 additionally, they'd have about 1.4 in a brokerage account. So the total amount that this person would have saved up over their career would be $3.6 million versus nothing on the other person. So this just illustrates, after going through the different examples, how you definitely shouldn't keep up with the Joneses. Find your way of budgeting and your way of financially planning and building wealth with these things, and set yourself up for success.
So you can see the examples that we just went through are pretty clear cut at looking at the difference, right? Somebody may look great on the surface. We're admire their vehicle, their boat, their house, their pool, their yard, all that stuff. But realistically, they're living way outside their means and they're barely treading water, right? So we should think of finances more from a function standpoint, less of a fashion standpoint, okay? The appearance of wealth is not the same thing as wealth. Another point this leads into is save your money, pay with cash, right? Needs, wants, savings, all that stuff that we've talked about in previous episodes. The best way to do it is really look at what the credit will actually cost you. If you say, hey, I'm going to buy a $70,000 truck, it doesn't really cost you $70,000. If you tack on the insurance, all of the additional maintenance costs, how much more the interest is on top of all of that stuff, it's significantly more than what you're looking at. So before you just say, hey, it's this amount of money, really look at what it's actually costing you. And best practice is to save your money and pay with cash, or have the ability to have the cash on hand right now to pay for it instead of leveraging things with interest. A little nugget to just put in the back of your mind on this is when you are making financial decisions about what you're purchasing, the whole buy nice or buy twice category, you could think of this in a different way, right? Instead of just saying, hey, I'm going to buy it once nice one time versus buying it twice, for two inferior products, you could also look at it from a affordability standpoint. If I can't afford to buy something twice right now, I probably shouldn't be buying it, right? So if you can't outright buy that truck kind of 2 times over right now, maybe don't buy that truck. Another point is use overtime to build wealth and pay off debt. Do not rely on overtime to pay your normal bills. Don't use that as a calculation when you are crunching numbers to say, hey, am I making my 50, 30, 20 split on your needs, wants, and savings? Overtime should be no piece of that. That should be used as something that's a wonderful benefit that we have, but don't rely on it because it is not something you can rely on. Things change, hiring happens, financial hardship happens for municipalities and counties and stuff like that. So you can't rely on that overtime. Wealth should be used to secure your family's future. It should not be used to boost your ego. It shouldn't be focused on, look at the items I have. It should be, what can I do and use wealth as a tool to provide for my family? Well, guys, thanks for joining me today on Finance for Firefighters with Warren P. Appreciate your time. Same as always, leave comments below if you have anything. Thumbs up if you like it. I'll see you guys in the next one.